Hello and welcome back to Sounds on the Couch. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest for you. So I've got Andy Beck. So Cale is the Celtic indie folk music project of Andy Beck, a musician and a writer who splits his time between Glasgow in Scotland and Maidstone in England. Admirers of Andy's music have described it as joyful, jumpy, and even evocative of a medieval fair. And he has also composed short jingles for theatre pieces and YouTube channels. And in 2014, his songwriting won him and his band at the time a Newcomer Award at Festival-Mediaval, one of Europe's largest and finest folk and medieval festivals. I know that there's so much that you can gain from the discussion that we're about to have. So let's just bring him straight up and we can start having a chat. Hello, Andy.
Hey, Karen, how's it going?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
So we'll just jump straight in, if you don't mind. So would you like to maybe tell us a little bit about your background and what's got you to the point that you're at now?
Sure. So music's always been very, very important to me. I'm 34 years old at the moment, and I started playing the guitar when I was in my teens. And I wouldn't necessarily say that my first songs were much good, but slowly over time I grew in competence, and then just got used to singing in front of other people, going on stage and stuff like that. So my voice got stronger as well. And then, I'm playing Celtic or Irish music. I call it either at the moment. And what got me into that was when I was living in Germany, actually. Germany has a lot of Irish pubs. And a friend of mine invited me to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with her and her friends at an Irish pub. And I was completely bowled over by it. Lovely music, great atmosphere, and everything. And I've never really looked back since. And I don't live in Germany anymore. I currently live in the UK, as you mentioned, of course. But folk music has never left me. So here I am in 2021. And as you mentioned, I've written many songs, and I'm working on some new ones. And I've also written a novel, all based around Celtic music. And it feels it feels good to keep that interest up. It also feels good to to slowly be making some progress and gaining some interest and some earnings with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, it's really interesting that you've got both that musical side and the writing. What made you decide to sort of head down that writing path as well?
Well, there was a time where basically I'd been concentrating on music, pretty much my whole life. And the reason I decided to get into writing was because there was a time when I was going through a low point with the music where I didn't feel like I was making much progress. I think the main issue was just that I lacked self-confidence. Part and parcel of growing as an artist is also developing the mental fortitude, the resilience to believe in yourself, to withstand setbacks. And I've got a feeling that 2021 is going to be a very special year because I've got that level of confidence up now where I'm ready to look at obstacles in the way and smash them out of the way. So that anyway, the fact that I was going through a low point with my music is what got me into writing. I thought maybe I could try writing a book about what I'm into. And that was what produced. I don't know if you can see the book here. I'll hold it up. That's what
Yeah.
little work, Folk Springs Eternal, which I
Excellent.
released last year, and it's a novel about four musicians playing folk music in the Irish pubs. Sort of similar sort of stuff to what bands like the Pogues or the Mahones would have done. And they're looking to sort of break it out of small town and have some major success with their music. And it's about the trials and the tribulations that they go through in order to get there. And so it's a different avenue from the writing. But since it's in the same domain of Celtic music, I can, sort of sell them together and people will realize that it's still the same artist, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all part of the whole creativity thing as well. So it's nice to be able to spread that
Mhm.
between a few different things.
Yeah,
So that's great.
absolutely.
Yeah. So who have been your biggest inspirations with music?
Well, when it comes to music in general, my first love was Oasis. They're the band who got me into singing. If it hadn't been for Liam Gallagher, I wouldn't have got into singing. And they're also the band who got me into playing guitar. I would never have picked up a guitar at 13 if it hadn't been for Noel Gallagher. And I think they and one or two other bands really gave me a strong sense of melody and a strong sense of what a good song is. Another band I would credit with that, Crowded House, who obviously you'll have heard of because they're from, well, the Finn brothers are from New Zealand, but the rest of the band members were from Melbourne, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, so those bands were early influences. But when it comes to the folk music, other than, you know, the popular traditional songs like, I don't know, Whiskey in the Jar, Molly Malone, Ye Jacobites by Name, other than that, specific bands, I would say the Pogues, who I mentioned earlier, you know, their early stuff in particular was excellent before their singer drunk himself into a dreadful state. Now everybody knows what state Shane MacGowan's in. Yeah, but they were a big influence. And then just other bands who play similar music to them, I suppose. I do like some quieter stuff too. But yeah, I would probably always point to the Pogues as an influence, you know, because they made Irish music really, really exciting.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think something else that I wanted to ask you earlier was you were pointing to the fact that it took you a little while to sort of gain that confidence. And I wanted to ask you, maybe for a couple of people who might be watching that maybe feel that way as well, what are some of the things that you did to kind of build that confidence? And what do you think it was that has sort of changed that over time for you?
Mm-hmm. I think getting older is just
Yeah.
one thing. You know, you stop caring so much about what other people think when you get older. But there were some deliberate steps I took. One big one is surrounding yourself with positive, driven people who believe in you, rather than people who don't believe in you or, you know, don't want to work hard. You know, maybe don't have the right attitude sometimes. Also, what I believe, this is something that I think a lot of artists don't get right. They think that the work that they produce and the business side of things are like chalk and cheese, that they don't go together. But I've believed for a while now that if you're any kind of entertainer, you do deserve to get paid something, you know, for what you do. Here in the UK, bands are expected to do a lot of stuff for free sometimes. And I mean, you know, I'm not asking for them to roll us out a red carpet necessarily, but it is nice to, you know, see something for what you do. And that's one side of developing a more, you know, sort of, I think, mature, business savvy approach. There are other things you can do too, like not being afraid to ask other people for help. That's another thing that took me a while to get right. I used to try and do everything on my own before I realized, okay, I need to get other people on side who can help me here because I can't do everything on my own. I don't have time to. So there's that. There are a couple of other things as well, but it's essentially, you know, looking at yourself, identifying your weaknesses, and, you know, just generally looking up to other people who are doing the same thing as you and doing it well, and thinking, you know, how can I learn from these people? What are they doing that's working? Talk to them, ask them for their advice, just working on your growth as a person and as an artist.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you've said as well that, you know, so many artists believe that they have to do it themselves, as you were doing earlier. I think that is such a big thing that people think I'm an independent artist. I really have to do everything myself and take it all on my own shoulders. But
Mm.
yeah, what you're saying here is definitely don't be afraid to ask for that help as
That's
well, which is
correct. I mean, we
amazing.
all get insanely busy these days. I've been reading a great book recently written by a guy called Dan Sullivan called Who Not How, and the clues in the title. It's common for people like independent artists to say, right, how can I do XYZ if I've got to record a song or an album? Whereas what you should ask is, who can help me with this? Or even, you know, who can do this for me? So, for example, I would sing the vocals, I would play the guitar, but when it comes to, say, playing bass guitar, bass isn't my primary instrument. I could outsource that to someone else, you know, ask around. And during the pandemic that we have at the moment, there are people who will appreciate the work, but given that, you know, a lot of us are in a financial pickle, perhaps you could agree a lower price with them and say, you know, I want to give you the work, but can we agree something here and meet in the middle? And, you know, most people I think would be happy to discuss that
Yeah.
with you. So yeah, you know, asking other people for help is a big part of it. And more to the point, if we conceive an idea as an individual, it might be a good idea, but other people will always have extra input that we couldn't have thought of ourselves, so that the project will ultimately be better, I think.
Yeah, Absolutely. And so going on that line of things, do you do much in the way of collaborations and with other artists for ideas?
Um, I'm getting better, I will admit,
Yeah.
because as I say, in the past, I've tried to do a lot on my own, even though I would occasionally ask for help. For example, when I did my EP, this is an EP I did a couple of years ago. It's called
Yeah.
Even From Here. It's got 5 songs on it, and on one of the songs, I decided to make it a bit heavier. So I asked a friend of mine to, do the heavy vocals. There's some. It's the comedy song, so it involves some yelling, and I can't yell really, and whereas he can, so I got him to help me with that. But I'm working on some new recordings now. I'm going to have a new album out in 2021. I'm 110% determined to make it my best set of recordings yet.
Yeah.
And this time I'll be getting, for example, a mixer and a masterer, to take care of all of that for me. Because when I did this record, I got someone to master it, but I mixed it all myself, to try and keep the cost down. But again, if I give the mixing and the mastering just entirely to someone else, on the one hand, it costs me, but there are things like crowdfunding that you can do to cover that. And the result will be that much better, that much more polished, and it's much more likely to, get added to the right playlists on Spotify, do well on YouTube, things like that. Also, in terms of instruments, I've got a good idea of which instruments I'd like in each song, but if there's any that I can't play or can't do very well at, then I might do some scratch tracks on my own. But when it comes to doing the final versions, I'm going to have to find someone out there who seems to be the right fit. And, again, that all costs money, but, there are things like crowdfunding. I know a lady. Her name's Leah McHenry. She's a metal musician, but she also teaches online classes. She raised $27,000 doing a crowdfunding campaign once, which is insane. If I can get to 4 or 5 grand, then that will cover a lot of outgoings. So it can be done. It's just a case of learning about these things and trying it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about the inspiration for this upcoming album?
Sure. So, excuse me. So I've been determined to give my sound a little bit of a modern polish, shall we say? Because when I did the last EP, it was a collection of songs that I was very proud of. The sort of music that you might expect to hear in the Irish pubs sometimes. But with this record, I want to take things in a slightly more modern direction. I haven't told very many people about this yet, but I'm going to be adding some electronic influences.
Okay.
And people will clearly be able to hear the difference. And the reason for doing that actually is not necessarily because I have deliberately concocted a plan to sell more copies or get more streams, even though that is part of the goal. It's just because I listened to a couple of musicians online where, they really galvanized my desire to start writing again. I don't suppose you've heard of a musician from the Faroe Islands called Ivor?
Ivor, no.
Yeah. So, or
I'll have
Ivor,
to
I think
check
is
it
how they
out.
pronounce it. So EIV, the O with the line through it, and R, Ivor.
Oh, yes, I
Ivor,
have. Yes.
yeah. Excellent musician. And she did an album called, there was a version in English and a version in Icelandic. It's called Slur, which I don't actually know what that means in did I say Icelandic? It might be Faroese. I'm not sure. I think it's Faroese. But anyway, I listened to some of her stuff and I just thought, wow, this is incredible. It was, it had that modern, sort of less organic polish on it, but it was still brilliant, captivating music. And she's awesome, whether it's in English or whether it's in Faroese. And, listening to her, also some stuff by Churches. You may have heard of them. They're from Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're nothing to do with folk music necessarily, but, just listening to those guys made me think, maybe I could take that and adapt it to my own style. And you're really the first person that I've said any of this to, because I'm working on my first song at the moment and I'm going to put a demo video up, but I was keeping it a surprise so I can shock the hell out of some people.
Everyone has to keep it really
But no, since I'm being interviewed about it, I can reveal 1 or 2 things. But
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it feels good because it's exciting. And, I've always believed personally that there are 2 types of pop music. There's pop music where it's blatantly just selling an image or selling sex. I won't name drop any artists, but, sort of stuff where, like, okay, for example, Ariana Grande, she had a new song recently in the charts where I listened to it and I thought, right, those lyrics aren't my thing, kind of thing, because it was very much about, as I say, selling sex. Whereas if you listen to someone like Ivor or, Churches, that it's sort of like electronic pop, synth pop, but it's still got a very strong melody, and it sounds like a real band rather than a robot, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the kind of more popular music that I can go in for, that I do like.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's good to be able to, yeah, like you're saying, take in all that inspiration from those other artists and be able to pull it into your own. I think that helps to really create and refine your own sound. So it's great.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about your latest endeavors that you've put out. I know that in December you put out a Christmas cover. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how that went, and what was behind that?
Sure. So what happened was, I decided at some point to record a cover song of one of my favorite Christmas songs, a song by a band from the UK called Wizard. And I don't know how much this song gets played anymore on the radio, but it consistently reaches the charts every year, and it's called I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day. And when I was a kid, I had a tape of Christmas songs, and this one was the second track on it, right after "Did They Know It's Christmas" by Band Aid. And yeah, I just remember loving it and thinking it was funny, and so I covered it, but I didn't make a video for it. So I put it up on YouTube, and nothing happened. And then I thought, right, let's really sort of step out of my comfort zone here, and I made a video. This was last year, actually. No, actually, no. When I say last year, I mean the year before last.
Yeah.
So I made a video of me jumping about like a moron, dressed up as a Scotsman and stuff like that, to really try and add some comedy value. It's on my YouTube, which is, you can find my YouTube under Andy Beck Music. And yeah, I put it out there, and it got a bunch of views, not a stupendous amount by any stretch of the imagination, but it is nice when you put a video out there that's averaging about, for someone of my size, 500, 600 views. I've got over 100 subscribers on YouTube now. So, I'm grateful for the attention that there has been, and this year I pushed the video again a little bit, and I put the song out on Spotify to get a few streams. On the one hand, it didn't get as much interest as I'd hoped, but then I didn't spend any money on pushing it, for advertising, because I'm of the opinion that paid ads are worth it. But what I've learned is that it's best to put money behind something when it gains organic traction on its own. Like on my Facebook page, there have been a couple of pictures I've put up over time that seem to do really well, and when that happens, that's the time, to put money behind it and to boost it. So yeah, I mean, essentially it got some interest. I've got some subscribers out of it, this particular Christmas song, and I enjoyed making the video. And yeah, my friends seem to think it's funny as well.
Yeah. So what was the process of making the video like? How did you put that together?
Quite intense. I think, I look back on it now and I think, did I really do all of that? But I must have been hyperactive in terms of, knowing where I wanted each shot to be. Again, in terms of what I said earlier, asking other people for help, I contacted a friend of mine and said, can I use your old studio, so that I can play guitar in that? And so it looked a bit more professional. I thought more seriously than I had before about my backdrop. I had a Christmas tree there and everything, and was wearing, like, I went out and bought some merchandise like a Santa hat or an elf hat and things like that. So I really tried to make the video look professional. I got my wife to film a few scenes of me moving around. So I had a clear idea in my head of what I wanted the video to look like, and then I just tried to implement that as best I could and ask the right people for help. I edited it all myself, which again, I could have given that to someone else, but it's come out looking okay. And but again, to talk about growth, when it comes to making my next set of proper videos, not demo videos, I'll do those myself, but proper videos, I'm giving them to someone else, no question about it.
Yeah, but I guess there's also that side, like while you do want to outsource things and not do everything yourself, I think there's also a sense that you want to understand the process
Mm.
as well. I think if you understand the process and then you can give it to somebody else, then that helps you ask the right questions. And
It
yeah.
does. I think you make a good point. There is a bit of a balance to be struck. Unless, of course, it's an area that I really know nothing about and really do just want to, say, here, take this and run with it. But even then, you want to make sure the person you're giving it to is someone who you can trust. There's a lady from London that I had a really good chat with recently, who I'd like her to become my marketing assistant over the next few months. And I don't mind spending money on that if the return on investment is good. And anyway, the reason I mentioned her is because she is in charge of the social media page of a Scottish restaurant that's up in a nice picturesque part of Scotland. So I looked at that and there was a personal connection for me, because obviously my wife and I, we split our time between Glasgow and Maidstone, and we love Scotland. And, so when you see things like that, you think, yes, maybe this person is right for me. But going back to what you were saying, yeah, when it comes to music videos, you do want to, try and have a good idea of what you want, so that you can work with the person and say, right, here are some ideas. And then, the result will be hopefully something like what you intended.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm sorry about the noise. My dog's decided to dig on the cushions. So I wanted to ask you as well about your creative process. So when you're writing your songs, what is the process that you take in terms of putting it together?
Sure. I have a question for you actually first. Which dog do you have?
Oh, she's a Beagle Cavalier. Beagler.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know a thing or two about dogs, but I have a writer friend, Yvonne is her name. She's, if you mention dog, then obviously she's the expert, so to speak. She's all over it. So she'd be able to have more of an in-depth chat with you about dogs than I would. I might like to get one day though. But no, going back to you. Going back to your question though about the songwriting process. So with this one I've been writing recently, I always start off with knowing what the song is going to be about, and just knowing what the mood of the piece will be, whether it's going to be happy, whether it's going to be sad, whether it's going to be bright, whether it's going to be dark, or any emotion in between. And yeah, I'm not going to give too much away at this stage, but the song will be about, actually it's going to be about a well-known book, a well-known work of literature.
Yeah.
And I think people, if they take a close look at the lyrics, they'll be able to tell which one it was. I'll give you a clue. It was written by Oscar Wilde. Apologies. So it was written by Oscar Wilde, and therefore I knew automatically what mood I wanted it to have. It's sort of quite a dark, and in some cases slightly disturbing mood, because that's the theme of the novel. And what else was I going to say? Yeah, the reason I usually pick one subject and stick with it is because I used to hate the lyrics that I wrote when I was in my teens. I'd look at them and think, no, this isn't saying anything. This signifies nothing. Then I discovered Metallica, bit different from folk music, obviously, but they were the first band who really struck me as being a band where they'd write their song all about just one thing. They take one subject and focus very specifically on it. And, that gave me more grounding, I think, in terms of my lyrics. I started doing that, and I was happier with the way my lyrics were turning out, because I thought they're actually about something now and they actually mean something. I don't like writing lyrics that are too vague. Then again, you don't want to write lyrics that are far too obvious, but you don't want to write lyrics that are too vague, in my opinion. So, yeah, in terms of the subject of the song, that is, where that particular inspiration comes from. And then it's just working your way through it, building up ideas and building around them until it's done, basically.
Yeah, no, great. I guess if everything aligned for you, say everything just went according to plan, you were happy with everything, where would you like to end up with your music or with your writing down the track?
Earning a full-time living with it is the short answer to that. If you want to ask me the classic interview question, where do I see myself in 5 years' time? Not working in corporate anymore. I have a corporate job, and it's a nice job, and I like many of my colleagues, but I don't want to do it forever. In 5 years' time, I'd like to be earning a living with a combination of 4 things, actually. There's my music and my writing, of course. I also translate from time to time. I lived in Germany for 6 years, and also spent 6 months in France. So I still use my languages. I translate from French into English and German into English. And the 4th one, actually, is I'm currently learning my 3rd language, which again has to do with Scotland. It's Scottish Gaelic, which is the Scottish
Oh,
equivalent of
awesome.
the Irish language.
Yeah.
And I'd like to do something with that in future, whether it's becoming a teacher. At a stretch, there are even people who are not Scottish who work for the BBC. They work for BBC Scotland and speak either they either speak Gaelic or they cover the Gaelic speaking areas. Two good examples are, there's a guy from Germany. He's a real polyglot. His name's Andreas Wolf. He speaks German, obviously English, I think Spanish, Italian, Gaelic. He's all over the map. And he works for the BBC. And there's an English guy from not too far from where I am called Charlie Quinnell. Chelach Quinnell in Gaelic, and he's done the same thing. It's like an English guy, but when he speaks Gaelic, you think, what are you? Are you are you English or is Gaelic? He's very, very good. So those guys are an inspiration to me. So, and the good thing about it sounds like having several irons in the fire, but that's good because if one of them fails, the other three can keep you going. So, yeah, I just like to use a combination of my hobbies and get paid to do that, and make income, but also make a lot of impact so that people tell me that my services are useful to them. It's not all about the money, it's about brightening someone's life up, brightening someone's day up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you seem like somebody who does like to have that variety from both traveling and living in different countries, but also all the different amazing things that you've been doing. So yeah, I think that completely makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, some people I think like one thing in particular, like my uncle, his well, aside from fishing, his sort of soul no pun intended, soul obsession is soul music. He'll listen to soul music and nothing else. Which is yeah, I mean, I guess I get it, but then as someone who's dabbled in and listened to different musical styles in my life, I kind of don't get it at the same time. But yeah, some people seem to have one interest, other people have more than one, and I'm someone who has more than one. Having said that, I do try to rein it in because you can't spread yourself too widely. Not enough time, and you'll just confuse people.
yeah, I understand that. I'm like that too. So from your experience, if there are any artists that might be watching this and maybe are a little bit inspired by what you've been doing, is there any advice that maybe you could offer them along their journeys?
Yes. Actually, before I answer this question, there is something I've been meaning to say. You interviewed Amber, didn't you, from the Amber Lee from the Crescent Cardinal?
I did,
Yeah.
yes.
Just in case Amber is watching, I wanted to say thank you to her for her friendship, and she told me about you. That's how I got to know you. I know that what was it she said? It's not really for me to say, but she said that Christmas time was a slightly difficult time for her. But so I just hope she's doing okay. We're in touch, she and I. But yeah, she's a very nice person and does a lot of work, to try and use music and sort of advocate for mental health to try and make people's lives better. That's I
Yeah,
was touched by that because you don't always meet people like that who are very, very willing to give to other people. It was inspiring.
yeah.
So, hello, Amber.
And so
um,
anybody that's watching this that maybe didn't see that interview as well, you can go back, you can find it on YouTube or Facebook. But we had an incredible interview with Amber Lee from the Crescent Cardinal that was very focused on, as well as her music, on mental health and invisible illness. And it's
yeah.
definitely worth checking out. You can also find the audio on our podcast at Sounds on the Couch as well. So
Mm.
yeah, sorry, Andy.
No, no, it's fine. So, but yeah, basically, if people, have found this inspiring, I would say, first of all, first and foremost, be true to yourself as an artist. The reason, as I say, that I'm going down this slightly different route with my new songs, something more electronic, more poppy, is not a deliberate attempt to sell more records or whatever. It's just, I listened to these couple of musicians and thought, yeah, this feels honest and real to me. So maybe I could try that. And it got me back into songwriting. So yeah, definitely, look at what you like and do that. And if you like what you're, excuse me, if you like what you're doing, then so will other people. You're very unlikely to like something that absolutely no one else will like.
Mm.
But other than that, I think we do have to be realistic to an extent, because like I said, if you're any kind of performing artist, you do deserve, to receive respect. And I think, something in financial terms for what you do. Different if it's for charity, of course, or if, say, you're playing at someone's wedding, there are exceptions. But, if you would like to spend more time doing what you do, and if you would like to earn something with it, so that, because I mean it's funny, isn't it? You get a lot of musicians who say, oh, I'd really like to do music for a living, but then to do that you do have to take some steps and be realistic when it comes to the business side of things. You can't say I want to earn a living as a musician, and then 5 years later you're saying the same thing and not a lot's happened. And the reason I say that is because that's what I've been through. I've been wanting to be a professional musician for a long time now. So you do need to become business savvy, I believe. We have bills to pay, we want to eat, so to speak. But that I think art and taking the business side seriously can be combined, and it doesn't have to compromise the quality of your work. That's what I'd say.
Okay, excellent. And so if anyone's looking to find you and your music and social media, where can they go to find you?
Okay, so a good overview of my music can just be found on my website. That's calemusic.net. There you've got all the social media, the YouTube, and a contact option. There's also a link to my shop. I run my shop through Bandcamp at the moment. So calemusic.net. And my writing is just andybeckwriting.com. That's where you can find the book again. And I've got the book in paperback and hardcover formats. And I've got a couple of other things up there related to merchandise. And there's also a self-help course that's mentioned at the end of the book that I'm slowly releasing on a weekly basis, and that's mentioned there as well. So yeah, calemusic.net and andybeckwriting.com, those are the main places to go.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really insightful and I appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. Thank you for